At this present moment, I find myself observing behaviors within Good Will Hunting, and it turns out that when I was looking to put a mirror up to the characters, that film actually held a mirror up to me. Unexpectedly so. I didn't expect to be mirrored in the attempt to mirror another person or assess their behaviors. And it's kind of funny because that's the depiction and the dynamic of Will Hunting and Matt Damon, who is also named Will, in The Thing. So I guess, and then I don't think I finished the movie, but I got into the Skylar part where they're arguing about imperfections and impurities and how 12 brothers and 12 brothers and he's a foster and all that stuff, and it's magnificent to me just how not eloquently, but how beautifully it's formulated. At the beginning, I think Robin Williams talks about the idiosyncrasies of his late wife, and what makes her beautiful was not the perfection itself, but knowing that what made her his wife, were those idiosyncrasies, those beauties. I hope I'm depicting it and not doing it a disservice, but that was like beautifully expressed, and the movie also parallels that beautifully. The concept of inability to wrestle with topics like you become Matt Damon in the film. It's almost too poignant to dismiss. You become him. You therefore become his lens. Now maybe I'm speaking in generalized terms because I can't see that this is really a reflection of myself put forth into film, his fears and how he masks it and whatnot through his self-destructive behavior and whatnot. So maybe that's me. And maybe I'm using generalized terms to do the same thing that he did through being as smart, weaponizing his intelligence and using it as a tool to assess those around him before they could assess him. Because he's a pit bull at the front, but he's a dog whose legs at the back don't work at all. So kind of just biting to stay alive. And his bite is his intelligence. So I don't know where I'm going to put this. It's probably going to be a little excerpt for the podcast, but Good Will Hunting, tremendous movie. We all have our Good Will Hunting moment. It doesn't necessarily have to be watching Good Will Hunting. It just could be Good Will Hunting. I don't know. Could have made a video about it and maybe tried to characterize it in that sense, but storytelling is something I have trouble with, and I don't always feel like editing videos together, so I just use my voice. And although I know that it's probably not going to be put out in front of a massive audience and that people won't really hear it or see it all that much, I just do want to say that even though this is going to go up and it's definitely shorter than everything else, sometimes the shortest of things are the most poignant and the most beautiful, as we know. And man, the intellectualized perspective at the beginning of Matt Damon and him talking about reading in books what Robin Williams had experienced, and then he makes the distinction and how beautifully he does it. Like, Good Will Hunting is a film to watch, but if you've never had the opportunity to watch it, just understand that there are beauties within this world that are waiting for you to be seen and experienced. And when they are experienced, they will change you forever. I've had a couple movies of such, Percy being a Wallflower being one, but that wasn't really a mirror reflection. That was just nice to see, I guess, for relatability purposes. But Good Will Hunting is something, and I can't even begin to fathom just how many people have moments, Good Will Hunting moments, that mirror moment. Sometimes it doesn't take much, but it clicks, and then all the puzzle pieces finally make sense. Everything that didn't make sense now makes sense. That missing puzzle piece that you've been wrestling with as to where it belongs and what position it's in, it just clicks and it makes sense. Like, it makes sense. As Matt Damon said beautifully when Skylar was asking him about how he's so gifted intellectually and if he has a photographic memory. He used Mozart and Beethoven as examples as gifted pianists, gifted composers. They just looked at it and they just knew how to play it. And then when he referred to himself in the piano perspective, he understood that although he couldn't play the piano, you can't hit a ball out of Fenway. Organic chemistry and certain things of that nature, just theory, all of that comes naturally to him. And that's kind of what I'm trying to convey here. Sometimes things just happen and it feels right, but you don't know it. But I'm not going to sit here and say fully trust your feeling, because who knows, but I'm not done the movie. But I'm going to put this out knowing that I haven't finished the movie. I'm just going to let this sit here, and then once the movie's done, hopefully expound on this and maybe have a refined perspective. But yeah, to each and every single one of us having a goodwill moment, goodwill hunting moment. So here I am, post movie watching experience, and I've got to tell you, I'm going to be watching this movie again, and I don't know how many more times I'll be watching it until this day comes to a close. But I was nervous. I was like 2 hours and 3 minutes in, and it's 2 hours and 6 minutes. And I was saying to myself, so does he go back and get the girl? Because like, although I myself am not fond of anticlimactic endings, there are certain films that are so riveting that you just harbor a bit of hope. But I've always been irritated by films that I always think that films are dismissive of reality, in a sense that it's very easy to get caught up in the happily ever after. It's very easy to get caught up in the moment and the beauty of it. But it's dismissive. What about the days where we as viewers of a film of somebody's life may say that maybe this shouldn't be happening, relationship-wise? What about the days where you don't really want to see that other person and you're really harboring a lot of hurt in your heart that you're unable to communicate? What about those days? Like, scenes that cut away from certain things, they all seem so dismissive. Now, I understand in films, they don't exactly have the time or the luxury to do that, so we have to leave it to imagination, which is kind of beautiful. But like when people get into awkward conversations and then the scene cuts away, they have the luxury of the cutaway, and we have to live in the reality without the cutaway itself, which I can definitely speak for myself in saying I wish there were some moments that had cutaways, because would have saved me a lot of mortifying times, would have saved me a lot of days in the shower thinking and singing to myself, yeah, take that, thinking of a comeback last minute. But I missed the entire point in thinking about when he gets the girl. Sean, the therapist, resolved his issues with his old roommate, the professor that initially gave Will Hunting a chance. Will Hunting resolved the loyalty concept about why the professor initially bringing up why he hangs with these four horrible individuals, and the therapist, Sean, bringing up as to why, because there's loyalty. A man who's been abandoned by the town has been taken in by these four people, and despite their character and what they may be up to, that is loyalty. They would die for him. And they quite literally did. They bought him a car, even though they probably didn't have the expenses to do so, and showing their love in the smallest yet biggest way possible throughout the journey. Ben Affleck going to knock at his door and him not being there, and him breathing a sigh of relief and driving away is beyond beautiful, to ultimately the ending being him leaving a note with Sean, the therapist, Will Hunting, I mean, and then going off into the sunset and saying, I have to see about a girl. And that's beautiful. Not just because he's going off into uncertainty, but we don't have the luxury of the cutaway. We have the luxury of before it, where we can now piece it together imaginatively or based on our imagination, hoping that maybe that things do work out. But even if they don't, there are reservations that they may not. And even then, we may not know, because the scene is him. And although he's not fully healed, and although there's still a lot of issues, that's the beauty of the film. So in doing so, I guess, in the theme of this film, one thing that I took away from this is I've always had trouble, and even me publishing this is a byproduct of that, having a perspective and not having the world know of it, because I am kind of on maybe not the opposing end of the spectrum, because things aren't so black and white as they appear, but the concept of having a thought that is so challenging to me that I hope someone else benefits off of it. So I rush to capture it in this bottle, capture lightning in the bottle time after time after time, in hopes that maybe someone will hear it. And then maybe, even if they don't, maybe someday I have faith that somebody will take something away from it. And the beauty about this film to me is that for every film like this, there's a person who's experiencing this every day. A genius on the outskirts, the Albert Einsteins who weren't even very much known before they reached critical acclaim, kind of like the example they gave, but when the professor was sitting in the bar with Sean, the therapist. And they start talking about people and what happens if you push people when they're not healthy. The Ted Krasinski Unabomber example, the Albert Einstein example, if he knows the guy who cured polio or discovered polio. And then I I can't remember which was which. And then the professor asked if he knew who he was. The guy said no. And there are a lot of juxtaposing ideologies in this, and that's really beautiful. But the point that I took away from the first time viewing this is, to each person and to each story that we see broadcasted, there is somebody who embodies it. And the beauty about that is they may not have the courtesy or the privilege of being able to have their work or thoughts seen by the world. And it's just a blessing for me to reflect upon this and know that it is a beauty to be able to come on this every day or whenever I do, leisurely, and talk to you about thoughts that I wouldn't have even been able to communicate if this had been 40 years earlier. What would I have done? Written about it? Had nowhere to publish it because accessibility to certain things was quite difficult to attain unless you had a certain status. What do? Matt Damon, in this film, a guy who comes from relatively nothing, if not nothing, actually, is given a mind that gives him everything. $1 reality, $1 million ambitions. But in this instance, it's a $1 reality, $1 million mind. And I guess in the end, one outweighed the other, which it could have gone either way. Like, he could have become statistic. And that's the weird part about it, the term statistic. Those who do become just names on plaques or relegated to walls in history's unending and cruel, cruel sword. It's hard because there is a Matt Damon type character, type genius in those who we've given up on. What is it? The Jesus parable that he gave about the last being the first and the first being the last and the cornerstone and the person who's cast aside being aggrandized and given honor and stuff. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it there for now. Keep this short and sweet. But I hope that you're all having a good day on this Sunday morning / afternoon, evening. And I speak thinking that many will listen to this, knowing that that's probably not what's going to happen. But hey, we'll see. Well, in that same breath, I wish you all good pastures and a great day. And I hope that my message isn't too disheveled. This is a whilst editing reflection. And I don't know if this little observation or insight of mine will add anything, but I'll try and go about it anyway and try and see where the dots connect. A man of such intelligence in Sean, the therapist, you'd think seemingly would know that his chances at the lottery are relatively thin. However, he keeps playing at it every single day, going for it every single day with the hopes that one day he might buy his ticket to paradise. He might be able to purchase a paradise with that lottery ticket, knowing, as in the movie, I think he said the chances were like 1 to 30 million or whatnot. I think they said the probability of being struck by lightning indoor was more probable than winning the lottery. And it's ironic to me because Sean seemingly wins the lottery with his wife, who then passed away. He then, at the end, when he's walking out, says to the professor, "Drinks are on me this time." And he shows him the lottery ticket. He says, this one is the one. It's going to take me to paradise. In a weird way, that lottery ticket is a testament to what he's done and who Will Hunting is. Will Hunting is that lottery ticket, the one that won. There are a lot of lotteries and there's a lot of money to give. And there are a lot of tickets in this world, but very few actually bring anything of prosperity, not even just monetarily. So the fact that Will Hunting was that winning lottery ticket for all the years of pain and grief that Sean went through, and for all the years of pain and grief, he brought back the professor and the therapist Sean together again after years of personal unresolved conflict. He brought Will a greater perspective of himself and his world. If anything, what he won was greater than money itself, but the lottery ticket, that lottery ticket that he said will bring him to paradise, was Will Hunting and is Will Hunting. And honestly, this is statistically hilarious and ironic in many ways. Because, like, if anybody has done research on the probability of one sperm becoming a life form, it's basically, you'd have better chances being struck by lightning indoors, yeah, than to have been born. There are so many things probability-wise that you'd have a better chance at doing than being born. I can't even attest to the randomness of, like, you have a better chance. Actually, you know what? Let's not do this, because probability-wise, I'm sure you could all come up with examples, but let's just keep it there. Of then being born. The concept of being born and the statistical probability of you being born is so, so rare. And yeah, we are. And it's a lottery that no one else is going to get the chance to live, because that is our lottery. That is our ticket to paradise. I don't know. Just a thought and a reflection of the theme of the recurring theme of the lottery ticket, which is shown throughout Good Will Hunting, especially with a man of rather amazing intellectual prowess. So yeah. All right, I promise that's the last reflection. This movie is very profound, and I'm gonna have to stop myself and upload this and stay away from the screen before I end up making numerous entries, because this could go on forever. It's a great movie. A lot of themes, a lot of beauties, but yeah, there we go.